Design by Robert Frost. Make sure you pause this video now, write down as many annotations and notes as you can from memory, and then take out your own notes and add those to this page before beginning. The title Design relates to the idea of how life and the world is designed, or you could say God's design. And I think in this poem, Robert Frost is questioning that concept of design. The poem is made up of an octave and a sestet, meaning an 8-line stanza and a 6-line stanza. Each of these are all done roughly in an iambic pentameter. This is a style usually used by Shakespeare, but in this case, this perfectly fits what's known as a Petrarchan styled sonnet. Petrarchan is an early Renaissance Italian poet, and he inspired many like Shakespeare and others, and this poem is most definitely inspired by that too. Hence why it's a 14-line poem with an octave and a sestet, all in an iambic pentameter. I think Frost shows this because Petrarchan was incredibly skilled at crafting these structures and designs. Hence why having a pun upon the concept of design, since this poem is about how God has structured and formed life itself. You can even see by this rhyming scheme how it's very tightly put together in an A, B and C style. Again, very organized, very highly designed. Looking at the poem itself, Frost makes excellent use of caesura. This is where a sentence is broken up halfway through or middle of the line in order to break up that punctuation and add emphasis at different points. Here we see a mixture of beautiful imagery such as white being mentioned 3 times, satin cloth, and a helol, which is a very elegant flower. Looks a little bit like this. What we see here is a dichotomy, which is where you take 2 opposites of one another, of beauty and disgusting imagery. So spider, rigid, moth, death, blithe, white, dimpled, helol, mixed up entirely. And he states this here, that it's mixed and ready to begin. He says that life is such a mix of beautiful, well, nature in particular is such a mix of beauty and disgusting things that it's almost like a witch mixing it all together to form a spell or broth. Again, this juxtaposition or dichotomy continues between ugly and beautiful, with snowdrop spider, flower like a froth, dead wings like paper kite, opposites thrown in. Moving down to the next stanza, we see a Volta, and this is a change in tone. He's no longer talking about this moth being stuck in a spider's web on a flower. He's in fact talking about life itself. Volta here at the sestet is again a quintessential example of a Petrarchan sonnet, so he's adhering still to the structure or design. Here Frost asks a series of existential questions, or why does this happen? Why does this exist? Why is the flower white and blue and innocent? What brought the spider up on top of that flower? What made the moth go all the way up there to be only snared and caught by a spider? But what design of darkness to appall? And this is the important line here. If God is all-knowing and has fine-tuned and designed everything, even such a thing so small, why would God, who's created such wonderful things, create such a horrific scene as someone having to watch a spider consume a moth alive? What godly creature would design this grotesque moment? And again, I think all of us at some stage have probably seen a fly or a moth or something being ensnared or trapped by a spider, and watching as they struggle to come to break free, only to be poisoned and then eaten alive and consumed by the spider. Really horrific thing, and it makes you think nature is so cruel. And he's wondering about this too. He says nature is horribly cruel. And if nature is so horribly cruel, would God truly let this happen? Now you might be thinking, is this a blasphemous poem that's trying to say that there is no God? No, I don't believe so. I think it's instead questioning something. I believe instead that Frost is challenging the idea that everything must happen for a reason. Instead, I think he is challenging the Christian doctrine of predestination. It's the doctrine that God has designed all events and predetermines everyone's fate. And really what I think he's saying is that with all the terrible things that happen in this world, and the spider trap here is just an example of a simple evil of the world, what malevolent or cruel being would design such a cruel moment such as this? So again, he's taking it away that we should not blame God for everything out there, that there is no direct design as this. And if there would be, then it would be a very malevolent and cruel thing to do. I think the important message to take out of this is that not every horrible and cruel thing that happens in the world is a design made by God. People can't just retract from that and say, well, it's God's will that this must happen. We must look to our own free will to make decisions, and that's the important part of morality.